This wasn't just another night in Tel Aviv, and people could feel it immediately. The sirens began to echo across the city just before midnight, just like they had many times before. At first, everything felt familiar, almost routine after weeks of repeated alerts. People moved quickly toward shelters, following the same pattern they had learned. For a moment, it seemed like another typical night of tension and waiting. But within seconds something felt different in the air. The timing felt off, and the silence between sounds felt heavier than usual. The skyline looked more active, more chaotic, more unpredictable. Then the defensive systems activated, just as they always do during incoming threats. Interceptors launched upward, leaving bright streaks across the night sky. For a brief moment, it looked like the system was working as expected. But then the pattern began to break in a way people had never seen before. The sky didn't clear as quickly as it usually did after interceptions. Instead, more streaks appeared, moving faster and behaving differently. These incoming threats weren't following the usual predictable paths. Within minutes, reports began to spread about something new. These were not standard missiles used in previous attacks. These were hypersonic weapons designed to move at extreme speeds. Speeds exceeding Mach 5, faster than most systems are built to handle. But speed alone wasn't what made them dangerous. These missiles could maneuver during flight, adjusting their direction mid-air. That meant their trajectory could not be predicted in the usual way. Defense systems rely heavily on predicting where a missile will go. But when that prediction fails, the entire process becomes unstable. Detecting, tracking, and intercepting becomes much more difficult. And in this case, seconds were all that mattered. Across the skyline, interceptors attempted to engage the incoming threats. Some missiles were successfully intercepted in mid-air explosions. Bright flashes lit up the sky as defenses tried to keep up. But not every missile was stopped in time. And that's when the first impact was felt on the ground. A powerful explosion broke through the night, louder than expected. Then another impact followed, and then another shortly after. Multiple strikes occurred almost simultaneously across different parts of the city. Fires began to rise from several locations, creating a new kind of scene. Buildings shook violently as shockwaves spread outward. Windows shattered across entire blocks, sending glass into the streets. Car alarms triggered all at once, adding to the chaos. The city shifted from tension into full emergency mode within minutes. People began calling emergency services from every direction. Calls came in from residential areas, commercial zones, and major streets. There was no single location to focus on, which complicated the response. Emergency teams had to divide their resources across multiple active sites. This fragmentation slowed down the speed of response in critical moments. And in situations like this, every second can make a difference. For civilians, something deeper began to change internally. It wasn't just fear of explosions or damage around them. It was the realization that something fundamental had shifted. For years, there had been a strong belief in the defense systems. Most incoming threats were expected to be intercepted successfully. That belief created a sense of security even during conflict. It allowed people to function despite the constant tension. But on this night, that sense of certainty began to crack. The skyline showed something people were not used to seeing. Not just defensive flashes, but sustained fires from direct impacts. Smoke continued rising long after the initial explosions. The system wasn't failing, but it wasn't perfect either. And for many people, this was the first time they truly saw that gap. Experts describe this situation with a specific term. They call it leakage within defense systems. It does not mean complete failure of the system. It means a small number of threats managed to get through. But in a dense urban environment, even one can cause major damage. And that reality became visible across the city that night. One of the most significant strikes hit a residential high-rise building. The impact tore through the structure, exposing multiple floors. Parts of the facade collapsed outward onto the surrounding streets. Debris spread across nearby areas, affecting more than just one building. The damage extended outward through shockwaves and flying debris. Nearby structures also suffered significant impact from the blast. Windows shattered across multiple buildings in the surrounding area. Vehicles parked nearby were damaged or completely destroyed. Fires broke out in different locations, creating multiple emergency zones. A nearby nursing home was also affected by the impact. Emergency teams had to evacuate residents under urgent conditions. The situation became more complex with every passing minute. Casualty reports began to emerge slowly as information came in. At least one fatality was confirmed in early reports. Dozens of people were reported injured across different locations. Many injuries were not from direct missile impact. Instead, they were caused by secondary effects of the explosions. Falling debris, shattered glass, and structural instability caused harm. These indirect effects often reach farther than the initial blast. Even areas not directly hit experienced significant damage. The impact extended beyond residential and commercial zones. Reports indicated damage near the U.S. Embassy in Tel Aviv. This added a new level of international significance to the event. Diplomatic infrastructure being affected increases global attention. The situation was no longer just a localized conflict moment. It had broader implications beyond the immediate area. Behind these events lies a deeper shift in how warfare is evolving. Traditional missile systems follow predictable ballistic trajectories. Defense systems are designed around those predictable patterns. They calculate paths and position interceptors accordingly. But hypersonic systems disrupt that entire process. Their speed reduces the available reaction time dramatically. Their maneuverability introduces uncertainty into tracking systems. Even small changes in direction can affect interception success. This forces defense systems to operate under greater pressure. And pressure increases the chances of missed interceptions. Israel's defense network is among the most advanced in the world. It uses a layered system to address different types of threats. Each layer is designed for a specific range and missile type. Under normal conditions, this system performs with high effectiveness. But even advanced systems have operational limits. And this event pushed those limits into real conditions. Another factor complicating the situation is payload design. Some missiles are believed to carry cluster-style warheads. These warheads release multiple submunitions during flight. That turns one incoming missile into multiple threats. Even if the main missile is intercepted, submunitions can continue downward. This creates a saturation effect for defense systems. Instead of tracking one target, they must track many at once. This increases system load and reduces efficiency. Interceptors become limited in number during high-volume attacks. Processing capacity also becomes a factor under pressure. The result is not failure, but strain on the system. And under strain, small gaps begin to appear. Those gaps are what allow certain threats to pass through. And those passing threats create visible consequences on the ground. What happened that night is part of a larger pattern. The conflict has been evolving over weeks of escalation. Each phase introduces new tactics and new technologies. Earlier attacks focused more on military infrastructure targets. But recent patterns show increased focus on urban centers. Cities amplify the psychological and physical impact of attacks. Even limited strikes can disrupt daily life significantly. This reflects a shift in strategic approach. Offense is adapting to challenge defense more effectively. And defense must now adapt in response. This creates a cycle of continuous escalation and adjustment. Each side learns from the previous engagement. Each new attack introduces new variables into the conflict. The situation becomes less predictable with every exchange. The immediate question now is what happens next. Visible damage creates pressure for response and retaliation. Responses are often calibrated to restore deterrence. But every response increases the risk of further escalation. This creates a cycle that can accelerate quickly. At the same time, global attention continues to grow. International actors are closely monitoring the situation. Energy markets and geopolitical stability are being affected. Diplomatic responses may shape the next phase of events. But uncertainty remains the dominant factor. It is unclear how far escalation will continue from here. What is clear is that the environment has changed. Faster weapons and smarter systems are redefining conflict. The margin for error is becoming smaller with each step. And the events of that night may signal a turning point. Because the real question now is not what happened, but what comes next.